Okay, welcome everyone. We're doing a deep dive today into some really fascinating source material.
Yeah, there's this piece from The Economist, The Uber of the Underworld. Quite the title.
Exactly. That, plus some notes we've pulled together.
Yeah.
And our mission really is to unpack how crime is going digital, becoming this service economy that almost anyone can tap into.
And crucially, what that means for you.
Right, because this isn't abstract. Think about those recent examples in the UK that the source mentioned. Harrods targeted.
And successful breaches at Marks & Spencer, the co-op.
Yeah, M&S, the cost there was potentially huge, wasn't it? Something like $300 million.
That was the figure floated, yes.
Yeah.
Massive potential impact. And these aren't isolated things. It shows a real shift happening.
So this core concept then, crime as a service economy, that's the big idea here.
It really is. The analogy works surprisingly well. You know, just like Uber or Airbnb created platforms that changed whole industries. Digital tech is doing the same for the criminal underworld. It's restructuring it.
So it's less about one crew doing everything from start to finish.
Precisely. They're becoming specialists. You know, service providers in this huge underground digital marketplace.
Wow.
And the speed of this change is, well, it's unprecedented. The UNODC, the UN Drugs and Crime Office, they're highlighting that this model is growing faster than almost anything they've tracked before.
Okay, so who are these players? The source mentioned a group, Scattered Spider.
Yeah, Scattered Spider. And they're described not like, you know, a traditional mafia family,
Right.
more like a loose network. Younger hackers apparently coordinating attacks across continents, maybe never even meeting face-to-face.
Incredible. And what are they using? What's enabling this? You mentioned ransomware as a service.
Yes, exactly. That seems to be a key piece of the puzzle for many attacks, like maybe those UK retail ones. Platforms like Dragon Force were mentioned.
Okay, let's break that down. Ransomware as a service. What is that, fundamentally?
Well, at its heart, it's software. Software that criminals use to lock up data, encrypt files, block access to whole systems.
And then demand money to unlock it. The ransom.
Correct. And the as-a-service part is where the Uber analogy really fits.
How so?
Because these RAOS platforms, they offer these, well, they're basically plug-and-play hacking kits.
Plug and play. So you don't need to be some coding genius.
Not necessarily, no. It dramatically lowers the barrier to entry. You can launch sophisticated attacks without writing the malware yourself. You just use the service.
It's like renting heavy machinery instead of building it. That's
Yeah.
quite something. What's the business model look like?
Well, there are a couple of ways. The developers who create the actual ransomware code, sometimes they sell it outright. Maybe basic versions for a few $1,000s, like $2,000 was mentioned.
Okay.
Or more commonly now, it seems, they run it as a service. The customer, or affiliate, as they're often called, gets access, usually through a web portal.
And they can tweak things.
Yeah. Customize the attack, choose what files to target, set the ransom demand, write the ransom note. Some platforms even include, like, a communication portal.
For what? Talking to the victim.
Anonymously, yes, to negotiate the payment.
Wow. So the platform handles the tech and maybe even the comms, and the original developers, they just take a cut.
That's the typical model. They get a percentage of any ransom paid. And interestingly, that cut has actually gone down.
Oh, why is that?
Competition, basically. There are more RAOS providers now, so where they might have taken 30 or 40% a few years back, now it's often more like 10 to 20%.
Still, a potentially lucrative business? What does it cost to get started as one of these affiliates?
Well, there was a mention in a criminal complaint from 2022. Seemed incredibly cheap then. A lifetime license for one tool was supposedly $900 or $150 a month.
That seems alarmingly low.
It does, though more recent comments from security experts suggest those costs might have jumped significantly, maybe up to $10,000 for a lifetime license now.
Okay, $10,000 is more substantial, but still, considering the potential ransoms we're talking about, like that M&S figure, it's still accessible for criminals aiming high.
Absolutely. The potential return on investment is still huge, which leads to the scale of the problem. Is how big is cybercrime now? Getting solid numbers is tough.
Yeah, I imagine a lot goes unreported.
Exactly. Companies worry about their reputation, maybe getting fined under data protection laws like GDPR if they admit a breach. Individuals might feel embarrassed or unsure who to tell.
But we do have some figures, right? The FBI data.
Yes, the FBI reported direct losses, I think it was $16.6 billion for 2024.
$16.6 billion, and that was up quite a bit from 2023.
A 33% increase in just 1 year. That's significant.
And that's just direct losses reported to the FBI.
Right. When you start trying to estimate the total cost, unreported crimes, the cost of responding, recovery, business interruption, all that economic fallout, the numbers become astronomical.
I saw some older figures. Britain, over 27 billion annually.
Yeah.
And a European Commission estimate.
Yeah, that one was for 2021, I think. Worldwide costs at 5.5 trillion. So what, $6.5 trillion?
Trillions. It's almost hard to comprehend.
It is. But the takeaway is clear, whichever study you look at. This is booming. It's growing rapidly.
And it's not just ransomware driving this growth, is it? The sources mentioned a whole ecosystem.
Oh, definitely. Beyond ROT, there's this whole marketplace for other criminal needs, like data.
So criminals are buying data now, not always stealing it themselves.
Often, yes. They might buy lists of potential targets or personal information to make attacks more convincing, or even data to figure out how to launder the money they make.
And where do they buy this? Dark web forums. Encrypted chats.
Both. Underground markets thrive on platforms like Telegram, Signal, and parts of the dark web, selling stolen credit cards, bank logins, confidential company secrets, you name it.
And how does that data get stolen in the first place? Is that another service?
In a way, yes. A major source is malware specifically designed to steal information. Info stealers.
Info stealers, okay.
Yeah.
Examples were Redline, Meta Info Stealer.
That's right. And yeah, important note, Meta Info Stealer has no connection to Meta, the company, Facebook's parent. It's just a name someone chose.
Got it. So how do these info stealers spread?
Often the usual ways. Phishing emails with malicious links or attachments, dodgy online ads, click the wrong thing, and it installs itself.
And what does it steal?
Pretty much anything valuable stored on your machine or in your browser. Your browsing history, safe passwords, huge risk for banking sites, chat logs from apps like Discord or Telegram, crypto wallet keys, personal documents, photos.
Basically, your digital life.
Essentially, yes. And mirroring the Ratus trend, these infrastealers are often distributed using a malware as a service model too, again lowering the barrier for criminals.
So easy access to tools that steal data, and then marketplaces to sell that data. You can see why big retailers are such tempting targets.
Exactly. Think about a company like M&S or Harrods, the amount of customer data they hold. Names, emails, payment card info, shopping histories, what you browse on their site.
That's the lifeblood of modern retail, understanding the customer.
It is. But it's also gold dust for criminals. Banks, investment firms, too, getting details on wealthy clients is obviously very valuable for targeted fraud.
And with all that stolen data, they can make their other attacks, like phishing, much more effective.
Far more effective. If an email uses your name, references something you actually bought, or knows details about your bank, it's much harder to spot as fake. It enables really targeted malware delivery, identity theft, all sorts of fraud.
Okay, this picture is already complex, but the sources mentioned AI is making things even worse.
Yes, AI is described as adding fuel to the fire. It seems to be transforming two main areas right now, making malware and doing phishing.
How is AI helping make malware?
Well, generative AI tools can apparently make writing malicious code or tweaking existing code for specific targets incredibly fast and easy.
Faster than before.
Much faster. There was a quote from Infoblox, a cybersecurity firm, saying tasks that used to take highly skilled teams weeks can now potentially be done in minutes by almost anyone using these AI tools.
Weeks down to minutes. That's a game changer for the bad guys. And phishing.
AI is helping create much more convincing fake messages, better grammar, more natural language, even generating them in multiple languages flawlessly. Combine that AI-written message with specific details stolen by infostealers.
And it becomes incredibly difficult for the average person to tell it's a scam.
Exactly. We're seeing reports of crime syndicates using AI for things like translating scripts for romance scams or creating fake job offers, bogus investment schemes, targeting people all over the world more effectively.
This scale, this sophistication, the speed, it sounds like a nightmare for law enforcement. How do they even begin to fight this?
It's incredibly challenging. That modular service-based model makes it really resilient. You shut down one part, maybe one RIAS provider, one data seller.
And others just pop up, or the criminals just switch services?
Pretty much. The source insight was that taking out one piece barely dents the system.
Is that why they had trouble with Scattered Spider? Even after those big casino hacks, Caesars and MGM?
That seems to be the implication, yes. Dismantling these fluid distributed networks is hard. The traditional approach is often trying to go after the main service providers themselves.
And there have been some successes. Arrests, takedowns.
Yes, there was a recent operation mentioned involving European and North American agencies. They took down a significant network, issued about 20 arrest warrants, so efforts are definitely being made.
But the overall trend is still growth. Those loss figures keep climbing.
Which strongly suggests the current enforcement strategies aren't enough on their own. They're not keeping pace with the criminals' innovation.
So what's the alternative? The material mentions some more drastic ideas being floated, like banning ransom payments.
Right. In Britain, there's a plan being considered to actually outlaw ransom payments, specifically for public sector organizations and critical infrastructure operators.
The idea being, if they can't pay, they won't be targeted as much.
That seems to be the hope. And for other businesses, they might not be banned from paying, but they'd have to report a tax, potentially allowing authorities to step in and block payments.
But there are concerns about that approach.
Serious concerns, yeah. Legal experts quoted pointed out a couple of big problems. First, banning payments doesn't necessarily stop attacks. Hackers might just pivot to stealing the data and selling it instead of, or in addition to, encrypting it.
Ah, okay, so the threat doesn't vanish.
Exactly. And second, what happens to an organization that can't function without its data back? If they're legally blocked from paying the ransom, even if it's the only way to recover, it could literally cause them to collapse. Think back to that potential $300 million hit for M&S if recovery wasn't possible otherwise. A ban could be devastating.
So it's a really difficult policy dilemma.
It is, and it underscores this fundamental shift the sources describe. The biggest criminal threat isn't necessarily the stereotypical armed gangster anymore.
It's, what do they say? Geeks writing and selling code.
Yeah, operating in this criminal gig economy. That's where the fastest growth seems to be.
Okay, let's try and pull this together then. The main takeaway seems to be that cybercrime isn't just about hacking anymore. It's industrialized.
Absolutely. It's a sophisticated, distributed service industry. The barriers to entry are way down because of these plug-and-play tools, these marketplaces.
And the scale is just huge. Billions, potentially trillions in losses and costs. And law enforcement is struggling to keep up because it's so decentralized.
That sums it up pretty well. This modular gig economy model is inherently resilient.
So for you listening, the key thing to grasp is that your data, everything from your email address to your bank login, is a hot commodity in this underworld.
It's valuable currency. And the tools to steal it and exploit it are getting easier and cheaper for more criminals to access. This isn't some distant problem. It affects everyone.
Which leaves us with a really thorny final thought, doesn't it? If banning ransom payments might not stop attacks and could even cripple victims, are we focusing on the right thing?
It's a fair question. What if the real root of the problem is just how easy it's become to steal sensitive data in the first place, and then to turn that data into cash? How do we even begin to tackle that on a global scale? That feels like the multi-trillion-dollar question.